Hi, so this presentation is on Design Slam. So I'm your presenter, Diane Lea. I am with Rio Rancho Public Schools, and my co-presenter.
Hi, I'm Miranda Ziegler with Jeffco Public Schools in Colorado.
So our contact information is there. There's also a link to this slide deck that we're showing, and a link will also be provided to you along with some of the links that we have to a Jamboard for ideas, and to a couple of links to a couple of organizations that helped to create this idea of Design Slam. Okay, so slide number 2.
Yeah, so when we are presenting Design Slam, we want to relate why we might use Design Slam in either a core or an elective class or in school for a CTSO club or activity that could support students expanding their knowledge past the traditional classroom. So when we look at the Design Slam structure in just a little bit, and we'll go over all of that format, first and foremost, the idea is that you're able to bring true skills as far as authentic career readiness skills and connecting classrooms to what the students might have an experience in the workforce. So this is an article that we're sharing here that's talking about the importance of connecting classrooms to the real world. And so it gives 4 main points. And of course, it's talking about being current with our skill sets as far as technical skills and then soft skills. They also talk about use of technology. And of course, right now we can see it full swing that we have to be at a moment's notice able to try and swing between different types of technology. And for our students to learn that as well is something that will be critical for them as they move past secondary education into post-secondary or working in the career field. They also want to encourage group work and collaboration. And so Design Slam is a great opportunity to demonstrate collaboration with peer-to-peer engagement. And then of course, the big thing about Design Slam is that you can bring industry into it and you can have the community a part of it, and that it also helps students demonstrate their skills in class that are then transferable in the workforce. So you're, of course, completing some authentic engagement there as well. So when we look at Design Slam, and you can see here on this quote on the 3rd slide that we are increasing engagement for students so that they also are self-initiating in the learning that they're taking and applying it to something that they can use after school. Now, what is Design Slam? Design Slam is a fun, and you can see this on the next slide, is a professor who teaches, well, he's teaches at Warren Tech in Jefferson County Public Schools. And Scott here is presenting here for a group of students in person in 2019. And of course, whether you're doing this online or in person, having someone to have fun, engagement, and exciting opportunity like you can see here in his face, he's so excited to be here. It's a fun event, bottom line, and it's a creative problem-solving competition for students. And we're going to talk a little bit about platform and how it could be amended or adjusted in any way depending on how you're teaching with your students or in your school. But they overall demonstrate essential skills as both participants and as audience members. So first and foremost, in Design Slam, you typically are going to pull competitors from the audience. There might be 4 to 5 rounds in the competition. Each round might be 15 to 20 minutes long. And the challenges that you present students, and of course we'll talk about the challenges in just a little bit, but the challenges might be scaffolded so that students are demonstrating certain skill sets depending on the curriculum that you want them to be showing the audience or working peer-to-peer in collaboration, so that scaffolds the critical thinking skills or the complexity of what they need to accomplish. And then of course there's a final round. So if there's 4 rounds, you might pick the winner of each 4 previous rounds, and then they get to compete in a final round to be the grand champion. You can think of it as kind of like a design chopped, if you've ever heard of that food show before. So now, what if is thinking about how we could use technology to our advantage, or perhaps not using technology. And I think Diane and I had some great ideas as far as, well, what could we do in a remote climate when students are either all remote, hybrid, might not have access to technology, might have great technology. So when we look at all of that, Diane, do you have ideas, Diane, of what you think might work well?
Well, when you first presented this idea to me, or talked about this idea, I thought about, because I teach all digital media, photography and graphic design, and I'm in a computer lab, I could think of a lot of ways that I could directly apply it to my classroom. But I was also thinking about how teachers who teach studio arts or, other types of courses where, like, if they wanted to incorporate this into their class, how they could work with, a variety of materials. They could, even have kids work in teams instead of individually. I mean, I think there's a lot of different applications ways you can apply the idea of Design Slam to, a classroom setting or a remote setting. We talked a little bit about how instead of doing an in-person Design Slam like you see in the pictures from last year in Colorado, how this could be done in, let's say, breakout rooms, where you could put kids into separate breakout rooms and then share the codes for the breakout rooms with the whole group. So then that way other students who are the audience could migrate through the different rooms to see what their peers are designing. So those were just some of the ideas that we talked about a little bit when we were preparing for this presentation. But just some of the things that kind of popped into my head, like, I know this was more of a, an individual competition, but I can see ways that it could be interpreted into, it could be worked in as a class project, and it could even be a group project, I think. So.
Thank you for that. Now, why don't we go and take a look at the background of where Design Slam originated from. So when we look at Design Slam and the connection to AIGA, it's a national organization, American Institute of Graphic Arts. And we included on the slide the handles if you want to go online for AIGA New Mexico. I am a board member for the Colorado AIGA chapter for mentorship and education. And here in Colorado, Design Slam has been going on for about 10 years in different ways, whether it's within student chapters at community colleges, four-year colleges, or high school programs. So as we move forward in the slide deck, we did want to show some Design Slam digital assets. So as you're thinking about creating a Design Slam opportunity in your class, a lot of times it's an option too when you're promoting it to have students create either a poster or some type of image that could be on the school website. So these are just some sample images of some previous Design Slam posters, digital assets, and then 2 posters from Red Rocks Community College where they had some slam competitions. And those ones included both high school programs, community college, and four-year colleges from across the state.
Okay, so on this next slide, basically we're going to talk, well, in this next group of slides, we're going to talk about the setup. So you're going to see examples, photographs from the Design Slam last year. So I think it was almost exactly a year ago, October of 2019, that this was held in person in Colorado. So you can see some examples of how a real setup would be, and then we'll also talk a little bit about how a virtual setup could work out. So on the next slide, so this would be, if you're following along at slide 16, this is, there's the next couple slides have photographs of the actual setup in person. So you've got a computer for each of the contestants or the designers. And you also have projectors set up so that the audience can see what those students are creating on their screens. So the students that you're competing against don't see your screen, but because it's facing, the kids' backs are facing the screens, but the audience can see what they're doing. This is a list on slide number, I think this is 20 now. of just the things that you would need if you're doing this in person. So tables set up, and you can kind of see from the photographs how the setup works, just across, so the students can't see each other's screens. You need computers and power, all the different like power connections, a projection screen and projectors as well. Tablets. So on the tables in the previous, let's see if I'll go back a slide here. Yeah, so you can see the kids all have drawing tablets. They kind of look like the Intuos tablets by Wacom. Those are nice to have if they're doing any kind of illustration work, if you've got it, along with the stylus. So it looks like at this point they're not really using them, but that's just an option to have there for the kids. And then styluses that go with those tablets. So yeah, and when it comes to, like, it really does depend on how you're doing this. If you're going to do it, if you're going to adapt this for virtual, you have to think about, like, what do the kids have available to them. I'm doing a separate workshop, little plug here for me, on the different media or the different apps that are available that are free that can work on a Chromebook, because most kids don't have a computer that can run Adobe Illustrator or Adobe Photoshop. They don't, because you have to have a certain amount of, like, the processor in your computer has to be able to handle the screen rendering of the images that you create in those programs. You need a good video card, and plenty of RAM and all that kind of stuff. And Chromebooks can't run those programs. In fact, you can't even install the Adobe Suite. So it's just something that you would have to look into. So there are some free Adobe apps that you can use. There's a lot of freeware right now, so like web-based programs that kids can use. There's Photopea, there's Pixlr, there is Vector, Gravit. Those are both pixel-based and raster-based design programs. There's even Adobe Spark, which is a combination. There's a lot of pre-made assets in Adobe Spark, but you can also upload original work as well. So there's a lot of options there. It's just something that you want to make sure you plan for, because what I'm finding out is my kids, even though they have access to the Adobe app, some of them are having trouble logging in. Some of them have trouble with the app crashing because of their connection, or because their Chromebook hasn't been restarted in a month, stuff like that. So those are all good things to think about when you're preparing to do this, whether it's in person. I mean, obviously in person, you can control the technology a little bit more. But if you're trying to do this remotely, you can still do it. You just want to make sure maybe you do have a couple of options. Maybe they can use have a choice of a few different apps to use.
The cool thing too is, even if you're wanting to try and stay within the Google platform and you're doing Google Meet, you could use a whiteboard and design challenges within, and we'll get to the challenges in a little bit, but have challenges that then also might be functional within that system. So you don't want to necessarily have things where if the student doesn't have a mouse at home, that wouldn't make it easy for them, but there's lots of opportunities to scale challenges to meet the technology needs.
And we tossed in, this is slide number 24. So we tossed this in as just a basic list of some remote alternatives that you could do if you wanted to use this, let's say, as an assessment. If you wanted to do a final, or I mean, maybe not a final, because those kind of weigh in pretty heavily in the kids' grade, but maybe you do want to do a project where they do something similar to this design slam. You could use Google Meet. You could do Zoom, any kind of like online platform with breakout rooms. Look into like what kind of software or apps would be readily available to everyone who's participating with the whatever they're using, if it's a Chromebook or some kind of a laptop. I know some schools use iPads, so find out what, again, maybe having some flexibility, and maybe there's a couple different apps they can choose from. Google Drawings actually does vector drawing. It's a little simpler than some of the, like, I worked with Vector and Gravit, and those actually allow you to draw curved lines. I mean, you can get much more closer to Illustrator, but Google Drawings is super easy because most people are using the G Suite for education right now. So that would be an app that you could use with a class that doesn't have a lot of digital technology. Maybe you just want them to do, some quick digital drawings. Maybe it's just that they pull out a sketchbook. Maybe these are all manual.
I love that idea.
Yeah. I've given out sketchbooks to all my graphic design kids this semester. And so a lot of what we're doing is, they're either pure sketchbook assignments or they're sketches towards a digital project that we're doing, and I'm making that a bigger part of the curriculum just because technology does vary for each kid. So, but you'll see when we get into the design ideas or the SLAM ideas, there are some that are not digital. There's some, hands-on building projects too.
So when you are in the design slam and you have students that are arriving either digitally or in person, you typically might give them a ticket. And you can get like a spool of tickets, just the general ones where it has numbers. They keep one, you keep one. And I typically would write down their name if it's in person. If it's online, you can then look at seeing who's in the room, and try and figure out if you're going to be giving them random numbers and assign them, and keep that separate if you're online, whether it's Google Meet or Zoom. And so the idea is that you can try and make it random as far as who might be selected for the first round, second round, third round, fourth, and then the final round, it's the winner of all the previous ones. And so if it's an audience of a class, or it could be 2 classes. If it was in person, it might be half the class if some of you might be operating on a hybrid schedule. And so it might be that you have to put some thought into how you could make it more random and not necessarily have to plan out in advance who's going to be in each round, though it could also be specific to your content. And then from there, looking at the students who are specifically working with Illustrator, and then having them in a challenge that includes using Illustrator. When the audience members have those tickets, though, it's a great opportunity to engage the audience in some trivia, engage them in talking to the contestants who are working on their artwork. And so one of the cool things that I've seen in the past too is where the audience is full, the contestants are selected for that first round. And you can see here in some of these images that we're sharing with you where the students are engaged, they're all like excited, the screens are ready to rock and roll, they get picked, and then all of a sudden the whole crowd gets up and they walk to the front of the room. And so the idea here is that if it might be one contestant in each spot, right, then the students come up and they might tell that student some helpful hints. Or they might say like, not that color, or change that font, or you need to go find a resource image online and you need to go to this website and look it up. And so what you see is some peer-to-peer engagement of students providing some ideas from the audience, especially when a student is picked on the spot to be a contestant. Sometimes they're a little nervous. And this also is an opportunity for students who have no skills in a certain area to get up there and say, I can do this because I know I'm going to have the support of the audience. And so it's a great opportunity to bring everyone together. So you can see how they're walking around, they're checking out what the student is doing. Of course, if they're doing this online, the student might have to at some point, if they're doing it in a notebook, they might have to hold up what they're doing and then show that to the fellow individuals or students in the breakout room. And it doesn't have to be where a challenge just has one student. It could also be where it's a group challenge. And so it could be 2 or 3 students that are completing something tangible, or it could be something where they complete parts of it as well, and then it has to work and function together. So there's a great amount of opportunity here to create challenges that meet specific requirements for your class or what you're hoping to achieve, and also the modality of online or in person. So one of the things here in Colorado that we do, we really strive for, is including community in industry. And as a work-based learning specialist for Jeffco Public Schools, this is that component of bringing in community to either judge, moderate, or to just assist and be there, give ideas as far as what the challenges might be, and give you some kind of brainstorming concept. So here's some industry that came, and then a handout that we gave in person so that the students could meet the judges. And I think that's very impactful when the students are seeing that the judges, and I do this all the time, especially when I'm creating opportunities for students at schools where you try and find people that they might come to the school often. It could be even an admin, a counselor, or another teacher. But to have industry leaders be the judges, it's very powerful for students to say, hey, I'm important enough that these individuals want to be here. And so I would say definitely reach out in the community and find some judges. They could work together and put them even in their own breakout room, if it was online, to let them judge the artwork and then declare the winner of each round in the final round. And then you might also include some information as far as your sponsor. So I know we have some slides here as far as communication for students in schools and how you'll communicate it with Design Slam. So Diane, do you think when you look at Rio Rancho, what do you think might be some good ways that you might want to promote Design Slam?
So we've actually done this with, we have a few events. We have an end of semester art show at both of our high schools, and then we have a senior art show that's district wide. And so we've actually done some of these things before. So some of these questions that are popping up, like how can you communicate or promote the event and how, we've looked into that. So like for instance, for our senior art show, it's held at City Hall. So we get City Hall involved, and they, in their own press releases, they put out a press release about the show. They do some promotion. We do it at our district level as well. So your district probably has a PR person that can get it out in newsletters and parent newsletters and things like that. We have social media sites, so that information can be shared with the people who control your social media for your schools, your school website, whoever the webmaster is. You can even do things like if you have announcements at your school or other places that students get information, like we have a rolling screen of announcements in our cafeteria. So we usually make a list of all the different ways in which we can get the word out. And then we have a student who designs, like, so we looked at some design posters. We have students that will design, a graphic for that show. And so you could apply all those same things to a design slam, create some promotional materials, and then have maybe you have a team of kids that works on, how do we get the word out? So if you are trying to make this a little more public, or maybe you, even if you do it in person, you may even have maybe you webcast it, on your school's YouTube channel. So there's a lot of different ways where this could become, it could involve obviously an audience that's smaller, the ones that interact with the kids that are in the competition, but it also could be that, anyone can tune in and view the design slam. So, and here you can see there's hashtags that you can develop to promote on social media, some of the different social media sites where you can look up information. And then there's a schedule over there on the right. And then, and again, we've showed you some examples of posters. So, just get this might be a good way to get kids involved if they're not necessarily going to be, if they're not going to be part of the actual competing. You could get some a promotional team together to create all of your get the word out materials. Anything else? Am I missing anything?
I think you gave a great overview. I think it's important, like if industry is going to be part of this too, giving them those hashtags so that they can also promote it on their handles as well. And, they're big fans of Instagram and Facebook. And so, if you do a YouTube screening and it's showing the students and the industry together, can that also be broadcasted generally to the AIGA chapter. So great opportunity to include even a larger audience for that awareness.
And the sponsors too. I noticed that they had a couple of Adobe was one of the sponsors for Colorado last year, and then there was a restaurant. I mean, even those sponsors would probably be happy to share the hashtags and the information about your event. So definitely share it with your judges, and then also your sponsors. Okay, so the challenges themselves. This is the fun part where you get ideas together for what are the design challenges actually going to be. So the most important thing is you have these are done in rounds so that you have kind of several different design challenges for the kids as they move forward and progress through. Like if they win the first challenge, then they go on to the next round. So an important thing to do would be to scaffold those challenges and make them maybe relate. Like Miranda was mentioning earlier, you could do sort of like modalities. So they design one thing and then it leads into the next part of the challenge. And then you can also do things like if you're doing this so that the kids are demonstrating class competencies. So if you are doing this as more of a class project, integrate, what are some of your exit standards for your class, the essential learnings, the terminology changes every time we change curriculum and revise it. But, what are those things that they're demonstrating by doing this design challenge?
Oh, Diane, I think we're ready to show them some great challenges too.
Yeah.
This is like the best part of the presentation because we all geek out together and think about what could the challenges be. So as much as we provide opportunities here to see some challenges, in a little bit, we're going to share a link where we can collaborate together and throw out some ideas. And then always, you could also make it something part of like a CTSO or a club activity, or part of your industry outreach is to have them design the challenges as well in partnership with what you're teaching. And if you're a CTE teacher and you're looking to try and figure out what you need to turn in for your paperwork for some of you might know like program of work or your 5-year plan, those are great ways to document how you're working with industry to keep your curriculum current.
So the next few slides basically have some design challenges. So we've been able to kind of read through this, or we've had this up on screen for a minute here. But the first one is to basically to design a symbol for the dollar. So instead of just the what we think of as the dollar symbol, we have a sign for cent that uses a C. So they have to create a symbol for the dollar instead of being the little S with the line through it that incorporates a D for dollar, like C for cent. That's the first one as an example. This one, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I love that one because it's easy enough where they could write it on a sketchbook. They probably could do it on, if you were doing like a whiteboard in Google. So there's lots of different options there when you keep it simple and it's more of an element of a conceptual component of, or even a basic logo.
Yeah, so this one is a construction. So construct a bridge with using provided paper and tape which withstands the weight of an egg. Okay, so that's a good challenge. That's kind of an engineering challenge as well as a design, as a creative challenge. So if you're teaching like a 3D art class or sculpture class, that might be a good practical challenge for them. Like I know when I was in college, I had a challenge. I had to design a chair that someone could actually sit in. And I mean, it was a basic 3D design class. It was one of my like prerequisite intro like foundation classes. But we had to build a piece of furniture that would actually be functional. And it didn't have to be comfortable. That wasn't one of the criteria. So mine's not comfortable, but it's in my garage. I still have it. It just had to withstand a person sitting on it.
Yeah, that's a great concept, the chair. I always love that one. That is a great challenge. I know, and there's also been stuff as like a skateboard that's made out of different material. And for the egg challenge for the bridge, maybe it's something if it's in person where you don't tell them if the egg is cooked or not.
And then this one is a drawing assignment. So this one could be done also in a sketchbook. It could be done, on a program, a drawing program as well. You're an object in a river. What are you? What are you doing? Why are you there? Draw your landscape. So it's more of a creative, almost an illustration type project. Design a compostable juice container for a new local brand, which caters to young kids who live in a food desert. So this one has more specifics to it. The container has to be, something that can be composted, but it's also geared towards young, children, kids, and they're kids who are living in a place where, fresh foods aren't readily available. So, so there's several different components to that one that could be, you could develop a much more kind of like multi-tiered sort of design challenge. I could even see how this could be scaffolded. Like you could start it off with design a juice container, And then the next step would be, the branding of it has to cater towards the specific audience. And, so you could definitely take some of these ideas and break them up into parts.
Oh, I think that's a great idea. And the reason that this one challenge we wanted to share with everyone is because we found an article online that talked about this company that created these compostable containers that looked so futuristic, looked totally cool. And it's a great opportunity to also bring a social issue when students are creating art, to think about how it could be applicable as a job in the future, right? Like, this is a need. We know that there's food deserts. We know that compostable products is also another one. So this ties together being a creative, being someone that's involved with environmental needs and causes, and then also how to serve a population that has inequity and loss of access.
We had a competition at our school a couple of years ago. Well, it was really within my class because I was approached by somebody in the district to do this with my students, and it was to design a reusable bag for the city of Rio Rancho that could be distributed. The person at the district was going to present this to the local chamber of commerce, like, design some bags and start to distribute them and encourage people to use reusable packaging instead of single-use packaging. So there's lots of different, like, both social and economic elements that you can incorporate into some of these projects. Okay, so in the next section, we're going to talk a little bit about, like, some of the skills that kids will demonstrate in a design slam, or some of the things you can have them demonstrate. So one of the first things we talked about was having them demonstrate their technical skills within the visual arts, or if you're well, most people here are probably visual arts teachers. So depending on what kind of courses you teach, like, what are the things that are important for your kids to be able to demonstrate, like good composition, use of color, use of some of the different, if you're working within the framework of elements and principles, you can incorporate that as well. But also things like voice, originality, voice, and even things like thinking about your audience, not only your voice, but what, where is this message, what is it being directed towards, and thinking about that audience. So you want maybe some of your voice to show in your design, but it should also be appropriate for who it's being shared with, like that juice container.
And then, of course, you just want to keep it as real as possible. So as much as we want to focus on the elements of art or the principles as design, make sure that you engage it with a topic that connects them to the authentic nature of working in a career force, or that social justice piece. That's why we love the juice boxes, the compostable ones, because that kept it real for the students and they thoroughly enjoyed that challenge.
Yeah, and while things like composition are important, and thinking about use of color, because we talked, like in my design classes, we talk about the psychology behind color and how color can mean different things in different cultures. The color red or the color yellow might mean one thing in one part of the world and mean something else. Like, well, who is your audience, and what kinds of things are, appropriate to use, and what things are best to use when you're trying to get a certain mood or message across. So yeah, all those things are important too. Like, there's a bigger picture to design than just worrying about lines and textures and shapes, right?
Of course, yes. And I think that's one thing here in Colorado for Design Slam, that we always wanted it to be as authentic as possible. And so we reached out to the AIGA Colorado board members, and we created kind of like a huge Google document where everyone could provide in some ideas as far as some challenges that they would like to share with students. And we made sure that it was kind of scaffolded for the rounds, but then also, like, some of them gave really long thoughts as far as it was almost too complicated for students and you might have to pare it down a little bit, and then others it was very simplistic and we had to say, okay, well, let's tease out what do we actually need them to accomplish so that they're demonstrating their competencies within the class, but then it also has that, like, authentic engagement. So you might have a thought partner in the community or school or student club, and that helps give you some ideas, because I would say to never do it in silo by yourself, because it's great to get ideas out in the community. It could be even something where you post it online in social media for your friends or followers on Instagram, or if on Facebook, and have your friends provide a challenge or two.
And there's a lot of good groups out there right now. Like we all belong to different online groups because we're like virtual. But the kind of nice thing about that is that everyone's been connecting, you know, and even with people like in other parts of the world. And so there's, you know, you could post something like this that you're seeing on screen now. So, you know, it's basically just a shared spreadsheet and you could share it with people anywhere. Adobe Education Exchange also has great resources for teachers. A lot of people post they post projects on there as well, like their own materials that they're happy to share with other professionals. But they also, you know, you could probably share something like this within a community like that and get great feedback from people that, you know, you don't really even know in person, but are other professionals or other teachers, both, you know.
And you want to make sure that whatever you do pick as challenges, it's specific enough so the students know exactly what they are responsible to create, but also try and keep it on the more simplistic side, not 5 different steps or products that they have to show in the end, because it might be too complicated for the amount of time. If the class is, you know, 50 minutes or an hour and a half, 80 minutes, whatever that might be, right? How do you divide those rounds up so that they're about anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes long. Here in Colorado, if it's in person, we typically do 15-minute rounds and then have the event be about 2.5 hours on a Friday evening. So that way it's separate from school time hours, but we don't go too late into the evening.
And these slides are just some images from the slam last year in Colorado, so you can see how the challenges projected up for the kids. That was with I think that's what the 5th computer was for. Is that correct? Yeah. And then because there's 4 students competing, and then there was a 5th computer, so that way you can see what the students are working on, but at the same time you can look at the challenge.
Yeah.
And then
the past,
okay.
Oh, I was just going to say, in the past, you know, we used to just say it out loud for the students, and then one of the things that this chapter did specifically was have that extra screen where they put it up and then they put a website to say, okay, this is your challenge and this is like what you need to complete using 4 images, and they gave a website to get the images. And then after this image went away, it went to just a general shot where they could then put up some trivia questions for the audience. And so we'll get to that in just a little bit. So the slide deck followed the flow of the event. And it didn't just stay on that one challenge for that whole round. There's questions for the audience.
So we actually created a Jamboard that's we've shared with all of you. And the link is provided. So there's going to be a link to a document that has all of our links, since you can't click on your screen and use this live link. So I'm just going to minimize here and go over to that Jamboard. If you haven't used Jamboard before, basically, like, we put a couple of Post-it notes up here with ideas already. This first board, and you can just do that by clicking on sticky notes. So you click on it, you choose a color for your sticky note, so you can change colors or have no color, and then you just type in your idea and save. So it's as simple as that. So you can add design ideas to this. You can access it. Like, we're just going to leave this up and leave the link open to all of you. So in the future, if you want to come back and look at these design slam ideas, even if you like see a great idea for a project, like, I'm already seeing lots of cool things I can do as sketchbook assignments for my kids. So, but you know, you can come on here and add your own ideas. The second board has some technology and materials. So if you have any suggestions for tech that's worked really well for you, or even just maybe you've done something similar like to this and you have some ideas for materials that you've assigned for kids, especially in remote learning now. I know a lot of teachers who teach sculpture are having a really hard time figuring out, like, okay, we can't really do clay, like, you know, air dry clay, because then the kids would have to bring the pieces back and get them fired. Like, I'm all remote right now. So if you're 100% remote, it's really difficult to do fired clay. So there, you know, I was having a discussion with some colleagues. We had in-service over the last couple of days, and we were having a discussion about, like, all the sculpture teachers were like, well, I'm using this kind of clay, this oil-based clay or plasticine or things that are reusable, but also having the kids work with materials that they might have around their house. So Miranda's adding a couple, she's showing you here, adding a couple of Post-its or sticky notes of some ideas that you can collect, that you can use for a design slam. The next is ideas for audience trivia questions. So we'll get to that. We do have a couple of slides on trivia questions that the audience was asked. But if you have any ideas, you can post them here. We have a board for wonderings. If you have questions, you may want to, if you don't want to share your email address publicly, you can always email questions to us too. But we can also, like if we see things, I mean, maybe you're just kind of posing a question that's more rhetorical, or just here, think about this. Or if you have a specific question, you can post it here and we can just post a sticky note back to you to reply and give you an answer. And then the last board is blank. I don't think this last board had any, I don't know if we had any intentions for that, but there's 4 boards where you can add in your own sticky notes with different questions or different ideas. So you can follow that link. It'll be provided for you to this idea. And this is another way to collect ideas for, you know, if you want to share this, like if you want to create a board like this for other teachers and get ideas from them. Or maybe you want to, maybe you ask the students themselves if they have ideas. Maybe you ask them, like I've done that before, like I've asked my students, hey, give me an idea for a sketchbook assignment. You know, maybe I'll use it, maybe I won't. And maybe if it's a really good one and you do use it, you know, I don't know, maybe there's some little prize or trinket. Maybe you have some extra pencils with cool designs on them that you give the kids. I mean, there's all kinds of things you can do that can make it fun. Okay, so let me put this, sorry, let me put this back into.
While you're doing that, we're going to talk about the audience trivia. And one component is that when students are competing, whether it's a group that's competing or just individual students, at the same opportunity, if you're in person or you're online, say you're in a Zoom link or a Google and it's the main room, what can you do with the students while other students are competing? And there's a certain amount of students that aren't necessarily up and engaged in supporting that peer-to-peer interaction. And so one of the things we do in Colorado is we do some trivia. And this is a great way to throw out some great questions for students that are specific to art and design. And then at the same time, they might also win prizes. So if you do have a sponsor, and sometimes it's just like a local place and you go over to Sonic or you go over to a restaurant, you see if they can sponsor. A lot of times the grocery stores, so if you, whether you're in Colorado, we have King Soopers, New Mexico is Smith's. A lot of times you might be able to get a $25 gift card to be able to, from the school, from the nonprofit. And so could you use that as a raffle item for a student? And sometimes the audience trivia for me, I've done like a flat of, well, actually it was like soup cups, right, for students to take to school. I've like something fun. I've done like Cocoa Puffs, like the Halloween, like special creations. I've done pencil kits or notebooks, stickers. So sometimes it doesn't have to be a really large thing. And if you're remote, could it be something as much as like extra credit points that they're able to get as well?
Okay, so where can we integrate Design Slam? I think in this section we go through basically some of the essential skills that students demonstrate. And so a lot of these are both, they're definitely CTE skills, you know, that are emphasized in CTE programs, but they're also important, you know, for basically for every kid graduating high school. I think it's important for these skills to be developed, at least to some degree within the you know, the curriculum that we're providing them. So the first one is personal skills. So some ways in which they can demonstrate that is through self-awareness, initiative, and self-direction, personal responsibility and self-management. So all of these, you can see how they would tie in with, you know, giving them a design challenge, being able to self-direct and manage and keep track of their time. Adaptability and flexibility, you know, to maybe new ideas or new software they haven't used. Perseverance and resilience. So when they don't know how to do something, maybe getting an audience member to help out, you know, or just kind of going online, you know, looking up. I tell my kids that all the time, like just do a search for how to use this tool or that tool, or how to, you know, what is the difference between this type of file and that. So there's lots of things you can do to kind of, you know, promote your own advancement, right? And then these are just some pictures of kids at the Design Slam working on their designs, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can take pictures if you're even doing it online. Maybe you want to just check your records to make sure that you can capture images of the students, or later make sure you edit out their names if you're just keeping it for your own use. But we wanted to make sure you can see how the students are working on these skills. And the next one, entrepreneurial skills, goes over critical thinking and problem solving. And then we just have a few more images as well, kind of showing the students demonstrating more entrepreneurial skills as they're taking risks and creating items and assets, and working with their fellow classmates or student club members. So you can see them working almost collaboratively. I love some of the images there. You can really see that how engaged the audience members are, where they actually like came around to the backside. They're like, I don't want to look at the TV screen in front. I'm going to give you direct support, and actually came on stage behind him.
Give me your mouse.
Yeah, right. I know, we can see that. And they're just directly supporting him and saying, no, this is how you're going to tweak it. So I think it's important that the students have that peer-to-peer collaboration, because I've had opportunities where there's been a student on stage who was like, I've never even opened Photoshop before, and they are there to design something in Photoshop and accomplished it because of the support from everyone around them.
So then the next one is civic and interpersonal skills, which I think is extremely important. I mean, all those other skills are super important too, but like really teaching the kids to be working with other people, that civic engagement, right? Being able to agree and disagree with people peacefully, collaborate, well. So collaboration, teamwork, strong communication skills, global and cultural awareness. We were talking earlier about the use of color, just being more aware of globally, like where is your design or your work going to be seen? What's the audience intended for? So that awareness, civic engagement, and strong character. So civic engagement, like, talking about projects that are more social oriented, designing packaging that's environmentally friendly, designing reusable bags, engaging them in current events, things that that are important to them, I think is a good way, good skills to incorporate into Design Slam.
I completely agree on the global awareness. And as we have awareness of social issues, it's a fine line between making sure you're like, let me give you a poster prompt, and you're going to create a poster for a very specific group or belief, right? So how can you make it something that is responsive to what we want to have students discuss as a group and push forward? And I'm sure you guys can all read between my lines of being able to say, like, we want to be culturally responsive, and also think about how we can push equity and access for all within our prompts.
So professional skills is the next skill set we can take a look at. So task and time management, again, extremely important no matter what profession you go into. Career awareness, information literacy, productivity and accountability, self-advocacy, and leadership. So all really important professional skills to take with them. No matter what they do, that's a skill set that they'll use, whether you're working in the medical profession, the design profession, you're a first responder, you're, working in an office setting, you're working as a park ranger, all of these things are important skills to have. And then lastly, we added in just a mention of curriculum standards. So if you do want to incorporate curriculum into this, clearly I think there was in all of those challenges, the kids were demonstrating not only their technical skills, but also their creative thinking skills. You can use your own state standards. So New Mexico has adopted the National Core Art Standards in the last few years. So we have those updated on, if you do a search on NMPED, you'll find them, but they're very similar to the National Core Art Standards. You can use those as a guideline. Look through what are your, what are you looking for in the work that they're creating, as well as all of the other skills we mentioned, like all of the professional, entrepreneurial, skills, etc.
Wonderful. Well, thank you guys for having us, and it was a pleasure to be here.
Thanks.